The cursed match at Mineirão. The Phantom Team. Lucas, Rafael, Mariana, and Diego were on a road trip through Belo Horizonte when they decided to sneak into the legendary Mineirão Stadium at night. They had heard stories about the iconic matches held there, but knew little about its darker past. It was supposed to be a harmless adventure. Just a few pictures, a walk around the field, and a good story for their social media. The air was thick with humidity, and a strange fog hung low over the stadium as they climbed through a broken fence. The stands were empty, the floodlights off, yet the moment they stepped onto the edge of the field, the atmosphere changed. A distant echo of a roaring crowd filled the air. Then they saw them. A full football team dressed in old, mud-stained uniforms was playing under an eerie glow. The players moved with unnatural speed, their movements too smooth, almost floating across the field. Their jerseys bore no modern logos, just faded numbers. The strangest part? There was no ball, yet they passed, tackled, and took shots as if it were there. "Guys, do you see this?" Mariana whispered, clutching Diego's arm. "This isn't possible," Rafael muttered, pulling out his phone. He tried to record, but the screen flickered, then went black. Lucas, the bravest of the group, stepped closer. The nearest player turned toward him. His face, if it could be called that, was a hollow void, his eyes two deep black pits. His mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. The ghostly crowd erupted in a deafening cheer. "Run!" Diego shouted. As they turned to flee, the stadium gates slammed shut with a thunderous bang. The fog thickened, swirling around them like grasping hands. Then a voice echoed through the stadium speakers, distorted and ancient. "The match is not over, and neither are we." The cursed history of Mineirão. Long before Mineirão became one of Brazil's most famous football stadiums, the land it was built on had a dark history. In the early 1900s, local legends spoke of an unmarked mass grave beneath the site, victims of a mysterious fever that swept through the region. Some believed the spirits of the dead were never at rest. But the true horror began in 1969, just a few years after the stadium opened. The tragedy of the unfinished match. On a stormy night in June 1969, a highly anticipated match was set to take place between two local teams. The crowd was electric, the players eager to prove themselves. But something felt wrong that night. Players complained of an unnatural chill in the air, and fans in the upper stands claimed they could hear whispers, though no one was speaking. The game kicked off, but just before halftime, disaster struck. A sudden electrical surge caused all the floodlights to explode in a blinding flash. The entire stadium was plunged into darkness. The panic that followed was catastrophic. People screamed, stampeded toward the exits, and in the chaos, part of the stands collapsed. When emergency crews arrived hours later, they found dozens of bodies buried under the rubble. But the most disturbing discovery was made on the field. The entire team of one club, 11 players, was missing. Their bodies were never found. No footprints led away from the field. It was as if they had simply vanished. The match had never been completed, and their fate remained a terrifying mystery. The haunting begins. In the years that followed, strange events plagued the stadium. Security guards reported seeing shadowy figures running across the field at night, always in formation, as if they were playing an invisible game. Others heard the eerie sound of a phantom crowd cheering when the stadium was completely empty. The most terrifying encounters came from late-night workers and intruders who dared to step onto the field. Some claimed to see a ghostly match in progress, the players wearing old, tattered uniforms. But when they looked closer, the players had hollow eyes and grinning skeletal faces. Anyone who witnessed the spectral game would experience horrifying nightmares, visions of being trapped in a never-ending match, unable to leave. The legend of the Phantom Team. Locals believe the 11 missing players are trapped in the stadium, cursed to replay their final game for eternity. They search for replacements, drawing in unsuspecting victims who witness their match. Once chosen, the victim is pulled into their world, forced to play forever. The legend warns, if you see a match at Mineirão when there shouldn't be one, do not watch, do not stay. Because once you see them, they see you too, and they never let you leave. No escape. The ghostly voice echoed through the Mineirão Stadium, sending shivers down the spines of Lucas, Rafael, Mariana, and Diego. The fog thickened, swirling like ghostly tendrils, and the phantom players continued their eerie game, their soulless eyes now fixed on the terrified group. Lucas grabbed Mariana's wrist. "We need to get out of here. Now." They sprinted toward the tunnel leading to the exits, but with every step, the stadium seemed to shift. The corridors stretched endlessly. The doors that once led outside now sealed shut. A cold wind howled through the passage, whispering unintelligible words. Then the sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind them. Raphael turned back and froze. One of the ghostly players, his jersey stained with something dark, was walking toward them. Only his feet never touched the ground. He hovered just above the floor, his eyes two black abysses. "Leave us alone!" Mariana screamed. The figure only grinned, tilting its head unnaturally. Then the stadium lights flickered on. The field was no longer empty. The stands were full, packed with a spectral audience, their hollow eyes watching the unfolding terror. They were clapping, chanting, celebrating as if a great match were about to begin. "They need new players," Diego whispered in horror. The realization hit them like a thunderbolt. The spirits weren't just playing, they were looking for replacements. Suddenly, Lucas gasped. "Look!" At the center of the field, a large, faded banner was unfurling from the scoreboard. The words, written in smeared red, sent chills through them all. "The game never ends." Before they could react, a deafening whistle pierced the air. The players charged toward them, their ghostly forms moving impossibly fast. The friends ran, dodging past them, but the stadium itself seemed to fight against them. Walls shifting, exits disappearing, the air growing heavier with each step. Then Mariana tripped. "Mariana!" Raphael turned back, but it was too late. One of the players reached her, his icy fingers wrapping around her ankle. She let out a blood-curdling scream as she was pulled backward onto the field. The crowd erupted into applause. Mariana's form flickered, her body turning translucent as her terrified screams faded. Within seconds, she was dressed in the same old tattered uniform as the rest. Her eyes went black. "No!" Diego lunged forward, but Lucas held him back. "We have to go." Raphael spotted an opening in the fence near the stands. "There! Run!" With no other choice, they sprinted toward it. As they reached the gap, a chilling voice called out behind them. Mariana's voice, but hollow, empty. "Where are you going? The match isn't over." The three of them forced their way through the broken fence, tumbling onto the pavement outside. As soon as their feet touched the ground, the eerie roar of the crowd vanished. The lights inside the stadium blinked out and the thick fog dissipated. They turned back. Mineirão stood in complete silence. The field was empty. No players, no crowd, just darkness. Breathing heavily, Diego choked out, "Mariana, she's still in there." Lucas shook his head, his face pale. "She's one of them now." Tears streamed down Raphael's face. "What do we do?" None of them had an answer, but as they staggered away from the cursed stadium, a single thought haunted them. The game never ended, and one day it would need more players. The end.